Welcome back to the Security on Happy Hour, where we bring together a group of security professionals and naturally cheery folks to discuss topics in the cybersecurity community, share knowledge, learn, teach, and exchange ideas. Before we get started, it is important to point out that the views and opinions expressed on the Security on Happy Hour and related websites are those of the hosts, guests, and authors, and do not necessarily reflect the official position or policy of any one company. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about double standards, diversity, and being a woman in cybersecurity. Lisa Bradley, Katie Noble, CRob, and I are joined today by Carmen Marsh. Carmen, welcome to the show. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. Just even prior to the official recording, that was a really nice conversation. So thank you. I'm really happy to join this podcast today. And for those that don't know me, I am Carmen Marsh, the CEO of Inteligenca. We are a cyber risk consulting company in Roseville, California, but I'm also founder of 100 Women, 100 Days Cybersecurity Career Accelerator. Because one of my favorite things, it is to build up people. And that's, we're going to talk probably more about that later. Besides that, to create those role models, we I have founded the Cybersecurity Woman of the Year Awards, now in a third year this year, as well as Ally of the Year Awards.
Wow. I mean, I know we were going to talk a little bit about the program later, but I'd love to hear more about it now. I think it's fascinating to me what you set up. So I'd like to share more of that with the audience, if you would.
So yeah, you would like to hear more about the 100 Women, 100 Days?
Yes, please. Yes.
So to give you a little bit more background on that is that when my business partner and I, when we decided to break away, because we were in corporate world for over 20 years and finally decided to go on our own, I wanted to hire more women into cyber risk analyst jobs. Didn't have much luck. So probably out of 300 applicants, there were 2 women, and they didn't quite have the right background. So it was kind of concerning, especially because I started in information security. We just called information security then, 25 years ago. And there wasn't a lot of women in the cybersecurity at that point, or actually information security. But fast forward, you would expect a lot more women to be in the field. And I think when you are sort of heads down and you working and doing your thing, you don't look up and say, oh, I think you just get used to it, that there's all these men around you. I don't think that I have thought much about it until we actually had our own business and we said, okay, we want to build a specific culture. We want to, hire more women. And then we started realizing that this was really still a problem. It wasn't, something that was on my mind before, but that was a problem to me. But again, as I started doing a little bit research and, I saw that there were other people talking about it. So there's a lot of talk in the conferences. So I would get invited to different conferences like RSA and Black Hat. And, so that topic would come up quite a lot. But one of the things that, it's all good raising awareness and talk about it, because we need to recognize it. More we talk about it, more it's out there and people can associate with it and say, yeah, you're right. There isn't enough women in the field. But then at one point I was just, okay, I'm just done talking. I'm like, we talk about this and we've been talking about it for years. And it's just like, we do this and I don't see anybody actually doing anything like solid to change this, so I'm very much a doer. And so one of the things that I would hear quite often was, women are just not interested in cybersecurity. Why are you trying so hard? Why are you pushing this so hard? And I'm like, no, that's not true. I always loved every part of it, whether it was a penetration testing or I was writing the baseline controls or whatever job I had, I always liked it. So I don't believe that for a second. So that was one of the things that were still out there, which is, it's strange, wouldn't you say? I mean, it's kind of strange. that there we would get that pushback. But I said, no, let's see what we can do. So I want to take action. That was the whole thing about I want to take action. So I post on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been my friend for a long time to get to to get word out about something that I want to talk about, or something that's that I see an issue. I use that platform quite a bit. So I said, okay, and that was in 2018. I am going to be launching this program. It's called 100 Women in 100 Days. And that is something that I think the way I envision this thing, it's going to be great, because up to this part, we've had the traditional education, and people have been coming into cybersecurity traditional way, whether you're infrastructure or programming, and it's all the same. Everybody's doing the same thing. When you look at a job description, there's always been like, oh, you have to have a computer science degree, and then you have to have a 4 or 5 years experience in this and doing this and doing this. However, we know, because and probably you too, everything that I've learned was hands-on my entire life, whether it was, setting up the networks or configuring a firewall or intrusion detection system or whatever it is, it was all hands-on work. And you gain it through experience. And a lot of times when you have a college degree, you still don't qualify for those jobs because you don't have hands-on. And we see these people that have a computer science degree and they have a master's in cybersecurity, and they can't get their foot in the door, right? So I'm saying, yeah, well, I kind of understand why, because it takes, cybersecurity is very, very complex. I mean, the work we do is so complex, and has been so specialized too. From when I started 25 years ago, it's gone in so many directions too. It's not just what it used to be. I was an InfoSec engineer at that time. We did everything.
I remember.
Right? We don't do that anymore. We have specialized roles for all of that. But the bottom line is the hands-on is a critical part of it. So going back to what I wanted to do with Accelerator is actually give our students, first of all, create an environment for women, and we can talk about that bias. Maybe it's a little biased too, but why women do better in all female groups, especially when it comes to complex field like cybersecurity. We can talk about that later, but I wanted to create that environment where women were super comfortable asking questions, not feel like they're stupid asking questions because there are guys in the room and they just feel like, oh, well, he's going to think I'm stupid for asking this question, so I'm not going to do it. And then that kind of prevents them from learning, right? So you don't want that. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to create that environment. I want to give him sort of industry certifications, train him, and then get that, because employers or hiring manager were looking for it. And then the biggest part is a hands-on piece. That's what I wanted to include. And that would be a program, of 100 days over 6 months. So basically it's still not a lot, but it would prepare them to the point where they could actually do some lightweight projects. They would understand when a hiring manager would ask them to do something, do a scan or whatever, they would know what they asked for, right? So that's where I wanted to kind of get them to the point. And they would be probably much further along, that was in my mind, much further along than somebody who has a master's degree in cybersecurity. They won't, so they'll have that 6 months plus additional internship opportunity to get those additional experiences. So going back, and I know I said a whole lot of things here. Going back to that post on LinkedIn, that was my dog, by the way. She snores, she's by my desk here.
It's great. I love it.
So I posted, and within first 60 minutes, I had 60 women pinging me, how do I register?
Wow.
And
That's amazing.
so so don't tell me women are not interested in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So right there, we busted the myth. It's not true. It is not true.
Yeah,
So,
Carmen, you brought up so many things like in that blurb there. So, I mean, I was a computer science major in college, and there were 4 women who were computer science majors and all the rest were men. So I just got accustomed to just being used to that world,
Yeah.
and I never let it bother me once I got over that hump of knowing that's the way it was. So I mean, sometimes I look around and say, hey, there's not many women, and then sometimes I'm just so used to it. But I think what you brought up is that we shouldn't be okay with being used to it. Like, why is it? And like you were saying, some women are afraid. And actually, one of my best PCERT PMs on my team was a teacher, and she is so thankful that my company hired her, and she's awesome. And she said to me, but if I would have really looked at the job description and read it to the T, I wouldn't have applied because I wouldn't have
Yes.
felt that I was, of that capability. While most men, not to be ripping on men, but feel a little more confident that, oh yeah, I know of that, and therefore they will apply because they know of that. And so, one of the things that I've been paying attention to as a hiring manager myself is, how do I change my job descriptions to make it that it's unbiased,
Yes.
and being able to have somebody that may not know all the skills still want to apply because they may fit so much of the other parts of it. And I think that that's the thing. Like, some of the most successful people I know in cybersecurity are women, right? It's a hard world, and there's a lot of balancing act, and women tend to be good at balancing a lot of things at the same time. And so they really do fit well into the position.
Yes, it's so true. Lisa, that is one of the things that we are heavily working on with recruiters. We have a partner recruiters too, which is one is CyberSN, but as well as Zeke Tech here locally in Sacramento. To work because they work with employers all the time, and they're the ones that issue the job descriptions. So you can. One of the big thing is to just recently, I've seen somebody's looking for entry level cyber or what is it? Was it SOC analyst? I think it was SOC analyst. And they're asking for 4 years of experience for an entry level position. So I'm like, how are you going to get someone? First of all, if it's an entry level position, you're paying low, but then you're asking for 4 years of experience, you will not find anyone, right? So I think it starts with recruiters, how if they have an influence as they work with their clients, the employers, they should be talking about those kind of things, and there's a lot more that can be done in refining those job descriptions. So it's not like they're asking for the world in entry level position. So women, like you said, Lisa, I think women will not apply for it because they're going to say,
I don't check the list.
I can't do this. And they will scare them away. And that's a common knowledge too, that men are much more comfortable applying for something that they don't have everything, they see, because they say, oh, I'll just learn on the go.
I heard of it, and they're okay with because they heard of it. I mean, not to insult anybody, I think it's great that you all have so much confidence, but,
Well,
I don't know a damn thing.
I was gonna say, I mean, I want to interrupt there for just a second because I've coached a lot of men on looking for opportunities, and they have that problem too. I hear this a lot, that they look at the job description and they say, yeah, but I don't, I didn't do that, to the extent that they're looking for. I said, yeah, but you have that experience. You did this at one point. And I can relate though, because I'm just the opposite, where if I see an opportunity, even if I don't meet half of the criteria, I will, if I think it looks interesting, I'll pursue it. But I've heard a lot of men do the same thing. It's really interesting to hear to me because it's foreign. I would just never think that.
I would think though, the majority though of job descriptions were usually not written in the sense of being unbiased for gender.
Yeah,
Is the problem that the CV is written in a biased manner, or the fact that the employer has unrealistic expectations
That's
about
right.
that particular
That's it.
that role.
Right. It's probably
Is.
both.
Or, or,
So
I'm sorry to interrupt, Lisa, but it could also be because not just that the employer has unrealistic expectations. I mean, if we're hiring, if one of us was hiring, we might take a job description that we've used before and put it out there. But in the back of our mind, we know if the right person came along, we wouldn't care what was written down. But that goes back to the point, right? That even though we feel that way, we might put the barrier up by the way we word that job description as well.
Yeah, and
right.
it's not intentional, right? It's not intentional. Right. But from somebody who's applying for a job, maybe, you know, oh no, I can't do this job, you know, so they won't. And women are super, and that's why another thing is that's why we do so many things to celebrate women too, and to empower women, because I think it's just ingrained somewhere. There are always exceptions, I'll say, but it's kind of ingrained in us to be humble and not to talk about what we know and what our accomplishments are. And it's harder. Even if any of you are familiar with Jane Franklin from UK, she's written several books on security, and she's got this in tribe security group and all. She says, you US people, you know, women, you don't celebrate what you know. You are so humble. You don't say what you know. You don't speak up. You don't talk about yourself. Shame on you. So she had this big challenge a couple of years ago. She said, now you're going to do the video challenge, and you're going to tell all the things you've done this past year. So it was at the end of the year. But it was a great example of kind of dragging that out of women to actually talk about what they've done and what they're good at, versus, you know, oh, I'm just sorry, I'm in, you know, I'm not as technical, or I don't follow the conversation, or, I mean, it's funny, you know, it's, anyway.
Yeah. So Carmen, so we sort of jumped right into the middle of the meat of here, but I want to like bring us back to the beginning, like, you know, why did we even think of this topic, right? Is there really an imbalance in our in the cyber workforce here? I know that I see stats of like by the end of this year there'll be 2.5 million cybersecurity jobs unfilled, but like I mean, do you know how many women fill the field versus men? Do you know those stats offhand or close to them?
I think we are close to 20% in US. That may be a little different in other, you know, the last stats I've seen. There may be new stats that came out, but the last stats that I saw, and that was, I think, from last year, we are close to 18%. It used to be in 2017 was 11% of women in working in cybersecurity jobs, you know, or those jobs are done by women. But now it has gone up, so we've definitely improved that, but it's still low. I mean, comparing to.
Are there stats of why? I mean, is it because I mean, we always hear these things like there's not enough women in the STEM field, but then I also think like, is it maybe scary because, I mean, when you think of security, it's like 24/7 at times, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, for me as a mother of 3 kids, like, I mean, there's times where I have to be like, I'm not coming out to dinner, or I'm like, I gotta order. Thank goodness for like Uber Eats and all that stuff now. But like, I gotta, I gotta like, you know, Grubhub. I'm like, I gotta order food because I'm not gonna make dinner tonight. Like, do you feel that it's because of the pressure of the cybersecurity area, or because there's not enough women in STEM back in the, you know, the old school thinking, or like where?
I think it's all really. We're not, and luckily now we have a lot more of those organizations that actually are getting girls interested, just to kind of bring them into awareness. I think start talking about cybersecurity early on and get them in sort of games and make it fun instead of just, can you imagine a 10-year-old girl being interested in like a solid cybersecurity topics? Or, I mean, you lose them, right? I mean,
Well, my daughter, when we
know that
asked for
that's
like,
true though.
I have to tell you, for me, my daughter, we had a day where they're supposed to dress up as what they want to be. And she wanted to be a nail technician, and not to insult that field, but it was because I take her to go, get my nails done, right?
yeah,
And
she
and
likes
and
that. Great.
and she just, that's what she sees. But I was like, well, do you see mommy work on the computer? Like, do you want to do any of that? So it's
Yeah.
like, how do you encourage them so early on?
You
Crow, you're
texted us
laughing
like
at
1
me.
a.m. last night, Lisa. You work too much.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
know,
we're
right,
talking.
maybe that's why.
So we're talking about like empowering girls younger to get them more
Yes.
interested in STEM, and we talk about that a lot. And I'm not suggesting that that's not important, because it's very important. But at the same time, I also want to bring up one tiny little fundamental thing that I see and I've experienced in my life, and it's that I never wanted to be in a place full of jerks. And so why should I want to go and learn about something and be in a classroom full of people who don't want me there? Right.
Yeah.
So I never wanted to put myself in that position, because why should I? Why should I take that kind of attitude and have that negativity put on myself when I could go somewhere
Good
and
point.
learn a skill that I wasn't going to have that shame projected onto me for daring to do a man's job. And I hate to say it like that, but like, I was in the military for 14 years as an intelligence analyst, which is a male dominated on top of a male dominated on top of a male dominated. And the environment can be overwhelmingly kind of set, and if you're something different from that, then it changes the whole feel in the room. I would walk into a room and conversations would stop. And they weren't having conversations about terrible things either. They were having conversations about sports. But I would walk into the room and the conversation would stop. And eventually you get to the point where you're like, why do I want to continue to put myself in a room where every time I walk in, the conversation stops?
That's interesting, Katie, because I mean, I had that too, but sometimes that would just fuel my fire even more. Like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to kick some ass, and I don't care what you do. You guys, I'm going to kick your ass. I'm going to succeed better than all you. Just watch out.
So I'll tell you, okay, one of my most defining, like one of my moments when I left the military, I was looking at different job opportunities, and I had always wanted to be, this is my little girly story here, I always wanted to be Mulder and Scully from the X-Files, right? I wanted to be an FBI agent. And I went to school for international relations and psychology and religion, because when I was 12, I looked up what degrees could be an FBI agent, and that was one of them. And so I did that. And then when I joined the military, and I was in the military for 12 years, not 14 years, I'm sorry. And I left the military and I thought, well, I'm going to apply. And I applied. And I got through there's like 5 rounds. There's an interview, there's a panel interview, there's a polygraph, there's like all these things. And then the final moment, there's a PT test. And I had been in the military, so I was fairly fit. And I show up to this PT test, and there are 35 people there. There are 13 women, and all 13 women failed the PT test.
Oh.
The test was being administered by other FBI agents, not qualified testers who were unbiased, by other FBI agents. And I will tell you that 3 sit-ups into that thing, whenever that person who was testing me was clearly not counting any of my sit-ups. They had some reason why they weren't. They kept saying, you're not doing it right, your forms, or whatever. And I looked around and saw all of the women failing around me and said, I don't want to work with you people. If this is how you're going to treat people in a PT test, then how are you treating people in the actual office? And the FBI has since had numerous articles about toxic treatment of women. And why would I want to put myself there? I have nothing to prove. I don't need to tell everybody that I'm the smartest, bestest, most capable person in the room. That's just going to hurt me. So,
but you are.
I get it, Katie. No, I
and
get
they
that.
know
I
it.
totally
I don't
get
have
that.
to prove it to them.
It's a good background story of why you don't do that. I guess what's interesting is I haven't felt that at all. Well, once I joined security, at all. like I have felt empowered. I have had mostly male managers, and they have all been so supportive of me and being there and listening to my voice. And so I don't know if maybe things are changing, or maybe it's our field, or, because I feel like every male manager I had has said to me, we need we need more variety of the people that are in the room.
But I think
And
when we look at this and we say, what's the systemic issue that's leading to this issue, like this unbalance, we talk about the unbalance. And we talk about creating an environment where we're empowering people to really be able to excel and to add new energy and life force into a community. Like those are all things that we have to have. And when we're talking about what are the barriers to that, I think oftentimes people go immediately to girls aren't interested in STEM. And how do we get little girls interested in
Right.
STEM? And I think that you're 11 year or how old is your daughter? 11 years old?
well, she's
8.
8.
8-year-old daughter
My
realizes at
daughter's
8 years
11.
old.
Yeah, Josh
That's
is
why.
11.
Realizes at 8 years old that she'd rather be accepted by her peers than not. And
Yeah.
that's
Maybe
interesting.
the
That's
thing, but it may
interesting.
also be something because we don't have a lot of, and that's I'm kind of, there's so many things I want to say. There's
We understand.
yeah, there's so many things that there we can definitely connect the dots there. I think one of the things is that we don't have, and that's why we created Cybersecurity Woman of the Year awards, is to kind of highlight those special women that are going above and beyond, that demonstrate that all these projects they've done and that look just like us, and so women from looking from outside in, they say, oh, she looks just like me, and look at all the things she's doing in cybersecurity. She's amazing, right? So up until like 3 years ago, we started with our awards 3 years ago. I think there wasn't a lot of recognitions. Now there's a lot more. I can see there's a lot of different awards popping up here and there, but there wasn't enough. And that was one of the reasons, because you have to have someone you can identify yourself with when you're looking from outside in. You cannot, if you can relate, then you're going to lose interest. You're not going to have not enough inspiration for you to even look up, oh, what is cybersecurity? Oh, what is she doing? Or, it's just not there. So it wasn't a lot of that. So that's one of the things. But I'll tell you, my experience has always been really good working with men as well. Like Lisa was saying, even 25 years ago, when, like I said, InfoSec was first sort of coming about, I had amazing mentors. I was one of 200 InfoSec engineers. So I had a lot of mentors, but they were all super respectful of me and always consider my opinion. I learned so much from them, and so I what I would say is it goes from a company to company. You can get into a very toxic company, and then if that's your first job, you want to leave. You're gonna say that field's not for me. And for me, I had a great experience. So I've stayed in for a long time because of I had that first good experience with working in all men.
Yeah.
I would like to have other women there, but it was good. My experience was good. It was positive.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess we all must have had a good experience, and that's why we're still staying strong. So I have a question, because I feel like right now there's such a push to have women in the cybersecurity field. And as a hiring manager, I do feel a little bit of the pressure. And I think this is a little bit of a controversial type of topic that I'll go into, but I always want to hire the right person for the field, always, and for the job from the field into the job. And I as a woman, I feel that lately I've been seeing such a push to hire women that I'm thinking, well, is that woman really going to think that they got hired because they deserve to get hired, or got promoted because they deserve to get promoted? And I don't want anyone to feel that way.
I felt that way. I've had that feeling.
Yeah, and I want people to feel that I got promoted because I did a good job, or I got hired because I was the best for the job. So how do we balance that? Because I feel like lately, especially this past year, with diversity hires in every sense of diversity, there's a push. How do we balance that? How do we balance it to make sure that we're still hiring for the right person for the job, and that we're not making those that get hired feel that maybe they got hired because they have a diversity qualification?
Yeah, I don't think you can tell them that in any possible way. And I think your executives or the leaders of the company will always want you to do that, because that is something that I think there's a lot of companies that have commitment to inclusion and diversity, even more so, like year in year. And this year is going to be an even bigger year, I think, for that. So I don't know that we should do anything different. We should still stick to, I mean, that's part of who we as a hiring managers are. Integrity is like, no, if they're qualified, they should be hired, not because they're women, but we want to give them all the opportunity, and they should be all, equally tested, equally questioned. Don't make a difference just because you're not asking women different questions, you're asking men for the same position. So it has to be, I mean, we have to do our job on our end to be fair, and then let the best person win, but be fair all along. Do it the same way, and then whoever is the best person for position and is to be hired. So then nobody's going to feel off. I mean, the only thing is that a lot of times when we have special attention to inclusion, diversity, sometimes some companies do go overboard. And they do, and that's what you said, you're afraid that that's going to be pushed on so many angles, right? And then you may get unqualified people in, and they're not going to be happy because they're not going to be performing to the expectation, their own expectation, to expectations of the managers, and then the company suffering too. So I mean, if you look at it from all, from all angles, so it is tricky. It's very tricky.
Yeah, I'd like to hear Josh and CRob from you. I know the men in the room here, but I know Josh, you're a hiring manager too. What are your thoughts here?
I think it's important to focus on diversity hires, but for the right reasons. Hiring based on merit and skill and capability should, I think, be at the forefront when you're making that hiring decision, for two reasons. The most important of which is that it empowers the person you've just hired by making them understand that the reason you hired them is because they're the best skilled person for the job. Yeah. And it doesn't matter whether it's a man or a woman, but especially if it happens to align with diversity principles at a company. If you don't do that, you first of all, you can make people feel like they were brought on board just for all the wrong reasons. And secondly, you dilute the value of or the spirit behind those diversity policies and principles. So I think it's really important to keep that focus whenever you're hiring.
Yeah, and hiring a person just because they check some box of diversity means that you potentially might be setting them up to fail in the position.
Yes.
And that's a really scary thing. You don't want to, bring in a woman just because she's a woman, and then her fail, because that actually has so much repercussions after the fact too. Is that, oh yeah, well, the last 3 women we brought in didn't even succeed in the position. I don't want that either. So I get worried about that too.
It's super important.
So sometimes I think too, you have to look, and this is true again of any candidate that you're hiring. You have to look beyond what they put on paper and beyond the words sometimes they use to really tease out who they are and what they bring to the table.
The culture fit too.
Well,
yeah.
The culture fit, but also, I'm going back a little bit to the conversation about STEM. While I agree STEM is very important, it is not the only quality, and somebody does not have to have focused on STEM in order to be an incredible player in the cybersecurity space. It seems to some counterintuitive, but it's true. There's so many other qualities that you look for in people, and they can always learn.
Well, no, yeah, like I said, my favorite my favorite piece of PM was a teacher, right? I mean, she
Right.
came from a whole nother world, and she was capable of learning, grabbing onto the concepts and just driving it. And you know, she didn't need to have this huge technical background to be able to be successful. And that's one thing that I think is missing. And sometimes when people think of cyber, they think so much of the maybe pen testing or threat modeling, and that when there is a huge breadth of jobs in cyber, you know, being
Yeah.
able to I mean, there's processes, there's directions to follow, there's things like that, like it.
Yeah, exactly. Policies. Yes, like you said, processes. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many things that can be done, even marketing. And so speaking of, you know, bringing, looking at people, you know, wholesome, not just what's on the paper, as Josh mentioned, is it's super important. I can tell you, and Elisa, you know, not having the technical background, our students, by the way, we've so far, since we launched our program, had 3 different cohorts that graduated from our program. So I didn't get to that point, but
Yeah.
graduated, and a lot of them work in a job. Some are doing the IT jobs, but a lot of them are actually like cyber analysts or SOC analysts, and these are success stories because they came from being a medical biller, or they were, you know, we had a stylist, we had the Uber drivers, we had, you know, Army veterans. I mean, we've got them from everywhere in different backgrounds, different experiences. You know, one of the things was, I think, important too, as we were placing them in a different position, is to map all the different skills they already had that were not related to cybersecurity, but to be able to map that in their resume and then coach them in doing the interviews so they could shine from that perspective. So it's not, they were not newbies in communication or you know, or writing, documentation writing. That's important in cybersecurity. You have to be able to articulate the issue and write it, and, you know, I mean, speaking to the choir, but those kind of things, and actually map it to the resume so they can look good on the paper, and then they can speak to, you know, to it as well. But yeah, different backgrounds. You don't have to have a technical background, you know, so.
I'm going to diverge a little bit and ask a question, especially for CRob and I. What can men do to help women feel more empowered and draw them into the field?
Talk about the opportunities. I think one of the things is still, I mean, that goes back to awareness. If you ask me, of course, I'm speaking up first. Sorry about that.
No,
You're the guest, of course.
yeah.
I take the mic. I think one of the things is that awareness is super important, because if you can speak about the jobs you do, you know, I've noticed that even with my family and the girls that are in our family, sometimes because I just think, oh, people don't want to hear what I do, or specific like to cybersecurity, I'll lose them, right? They'll think it's boring, and that's in my mind, you know. And I think everyone should be thinking, no, how can I explain, or how can I talk about what I do in a way that it's interesting? It can be interesting, right? And not lose the audience. So I think talk about what we do and how fun it is to do what we do in a way that they can, you know, they can follow. It's one of the things that men can do, because I think men just automatically, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm bashing on men, but I think it's one of those things that you will think that people are not interested about your job, what you do, because it is more on a technical side, and you get together with friends and their kids, and, you know, you don't talk about your job that much. It's just, so that's one thing, talking about it.
Yeah, well, if you listen to our IoT podcast, which is for anybody, like it's funny, and it like I told my girlfriends, I'm like, you have to watch it because anybody could relate to it, and you could finally understand my sense of the world a little bit in like what you do every day, from your self-driving car or your ring on your doorknob or things like that. But you're right, it's interesting because sometimes I tone down what I do just assuming that
Yeah, we assume things.
we
Yeah.
assume that somebody might not understand or pay attention. So I guess the point is don't be afraid to speak up and be proud and be even technical a little bit in the conversation, right?
Absolutely. And, I'll give you an example. I was at our RSA conference last year, and I would take Uber, from different places. And I'm sitting with this woman, she's an Uber driver, and we're just talking about the conference. And then I said, yeah, well, you should look into it. And then we're just talking. And I said, well, we have this program, and you should really, it just kind of casually happened in the Uber conversation. And she got into our program and she got trained,
Oh my God, that's great, Carmen. That's awesome.
So talk about it. Talk about what
yeah, I'm laughing because I've done that before. And actually I find myself doing it all over. I was in Edinburgh, Scotland in 2019, and I did that. I ran into somebody, that, we struck up a conversation. It was a young person, and I told them about what I do. We just got into a conversation. Oh, I could never do that. No, you can. And here's how you do it, and I gave him my card and I said, stay in touch.
I can do it. Anybody can do it.
Well, that's usually where I go, right? Yeah, absolutely. But that's, I think you're spot on. And I've spoken at universities before, usually in, as part of a panel or to smaller groups, so that I can have a more engaging experience. Because I did not follow a traditional educational path myself. This is part of why I was really so interested in your program, because the following a non-traditional path, the certifications, I think, give people just as much, if not more, experience than what they need when they hit the ground. And I found that for myself. And so this is a path that I usually line up for anybody else that I'm talking to. When I've talked to university students, I gotta say, honestly, it's the women in the room that I find to be sitting on the edge of their seat, paying attention, and looking not just hungry, but passionate about the topic that we're discussing. So, I feel like there is women that are very interested in this field, that are very capable and see not just the diversity of the field itself in scope, in complexity, but the possibilities and the opportunities. So I agree. Saying that it's just that women aren't interested is definitely misguided.
Yeah. I'm curious, CRob and Josh, did you, in your career, did you ever feel that because you being male, that you were ever not up to par for whatever the situation was?
Every day.
Damn right. Yeah. Every day.
Shame is a pretty universal feeling. Yeah, men feel shame and vulnerability and weakness the same way that women do.
But did you ever look around and did you ever go to a conference and look around and say, wow, I am not like everybody else here?
Guaranteed.
Absolutely.
Everybody at the conference looks just like me. I have the InfoSec uniform right here.
Yeah, but you probably opened your mouth and started talking, CRob, and then suddenly realized that you were very different from everybody else and still had those feelings of insecurity, that momentary, maybe I'm not in the right place. That's a universal feeling. And I think that we put a lot of emphasis on gender, but there's a lot more going on here. The way that women and men manifest shame may be different, but it doesn't mean that those feelings aren't there. That imposter syndrome,
But maybe it's not there right away. My first thing when I walk into a security conference is usually oh my God, there's hardly any women. And then I try to get over it. But so maybe with the men, they don't feel insecure until they start talking and realizing maybe they're different then.
But you're hyper-focused on being a woman. Maybe that's the thing that you're hyper focused on.
It could be.
Everybody's hyper focused on you. Don't worry about it. That's a different
I will
problem.
tell you, when I walk into a conference, or when I'm walk into a room, I look around at the people and I think, thank God, they're so much smarter than me. I can learn something from everybody that's there, and I feel that way all the time. Now, does it stop me from moving forward? Do I feel paralyzed by it? No. But I do feel more often than not, I feel intimidated, but I see that as an opportunity to learn.
CRob, go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Not conference related, and not hiring related. One technique that I use is I've been very fortunate to interact with a lot of incredibly talented people in my career. Many of them have happened to be very successful women, but I've worked with a lot of really great people. But as I've had the opportunity to be a leader and to lead ladies, and even today, one of my mentees is a young lady in our InfoSec program. And I understand that I have certain background, certain skills, certain things that I can offer to teach anybody, but the scope of what I have to offer is limited. My perspective is limited. I don't have the same perspective that that Katie had, going up through the DoD, and like Lisa, where you were the only one of a handful of ladies in at the companies you worked at. So a technique I've used is trying to build connections and to try to afford the women that I work with opportunities to talk with other women so that they can kind of grow that community, commiserate, learn from each other. The lady I'm mentoring now, the first assignment I had for my mentee is, here are the top 8 engineering and business women leaders in the organization. I want you to go schedule a one-on-one and talk to them to learn about how they got to where they are, kind of what they do, what their deal is, just to help her build her network. And I'm doing the same thing with my niece. My niece is changing her career. She was in pharmacy, and she's decided she wants to get into cyber. Good luck. But I've been, again, I have had the opportunity to work with an amazing network of talented people across the industry. So I connected her to folks like Sean and other folks that we know that are friends of the show, to kind of give my niece a perspective of, she's been, the ladies I'm introducing her to have been there. They've fought the good fight. They've earned, through their tenacity and skill, earned their positions, kind of help share that perspective with the next generation. So that's a technique I've used.
That's wonderful.
Katie, I was going to go and talk about our last topic here because it leads right into it. What
Katie's
resources exist, right? So go ahead, Katie.
Katie's turn.
Go ahead, Katie.
So CRob, I love that you're doing that. And I would challenge you to anybody that you mentor, not just the women, to tell those people to go talk to those 8 women. Yes. Because your junior male employees can benefit from that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But you're right though, CRob. There's a lot of resources out there to help support women. There's a lot of women conferences. There's a lot of women networking
I can only
events
help so much.
and things like that. No, but you're absolutely right. And that, especially if there's a woman who feels like they're alone in their area because we're with all men. We want them to be like going to the women in technology groups, or or the WISIS and some of the other areas there, so that they don't feel alone and they have a network if they don't quite feel that their network within their own company is the same as them. So Carmen, I know you're probably attached to 5 million resources out there. So maybe we could end with, like, what resources exist to help help women that are in the field or wanting to be in the field, feel confident and feel like they have that strong network to back them up.
Yes, it's super important to build relationships, and that's one of the things that we preach all the time in our 100 Women 100 Days Cybersecurity Career Accelerator. You are going to be, this is your success. It's part of your success, building those relationships, learn from them, and actually build real relationships with them. Not just, hey, reach out and like, hey, I'm looking for a job. that doesn't work. You need to put your time and effort, and over time you build these relationships and you put time into those relationships. But there's tons of resources. I know a friend of mine, and she's my co-host of Monday's event, Noreen in New York. She has a group now, I think several thousands of women, mentor-mentee group, specific to women in cybersecurity. I mean, she's doing an amazing job. She does the, I think they meet once every 3 weeks. She does a Saturday networking group, and she mentors so many. And then the members and mentors others. And if you want to be mentor, you can be part of. If you want to be mentee, you can be that as well. But that's a great resource. There's several other groups out there for women in cybersecurity. Oh gosh, there's just a lot of them. And maybe I can send it or post it in, I guess not in a chat now, but definitely there's so many. So just don't hesitate, reach out to people. And I'll tell you, some of the best relationship I've started is by reaching out to people on LinkedIn, saying, hey, I see what you're doing. I really like what you have something good to say. Don't be like, there's too many advertisement. Oh, I have something for you. You click on this or do this. And but really just honestly, come up with a good question and reach out, and most people will respond to you. And you take it from there. You maybe then meet them in person, or you evolve your relationship over time, and don't keep asking for favors right after that. That's one of the things that is definitely a no. That doesn't help you build good relationships.
Yeah, no, I mean, Carmen, that's how I met you. One of my coworkers was like, hey, you need to meet Carmen. She's awesome. She'd be a good person for you to talk to. And then, we built a relationship. It's great. Hey, CRob, that's how
I met you because you
too.
yelled at me.
I
in the
yelled
middle
at
of a
you.
Conference presentation.
I was not shy at a conference.
Constantly.
I know I bugged the crap out of you, but look at you. You love me now. All good. No, but you're right. It's like reach out and make that bond and offer just as much as you're going to get out of it. I think you're right. So, okay, Josh, you want to wrap us up here?
Yeah, well, no, Carmen, really, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today to talk about this. This is a very important topic, and I hope that everybody in the audience takes something away from this, and we all look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.